I'm going to call the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Novak.
Here.
Member Schutte.
Here.
Member Henderson.
Present.
Member Dodson. Here. Member Erb. Member Maloney.
Here.
Ex officio Member Rosenberg. Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you so much. We're now on to opening public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make beginning public comment? No? Yes, come on up. You just push the button, it'll turn green, and then state your name for the record. You'll probably have to keep it closer to yourself or we won't be able to hear you.
Okay, and I don't, yeah, okay, everyone can hear me? Hello, my name's Laura Brunslick. I live in Dayton. I'm here today. I have this prepared, and so when I saw about this meeting, I thought, well, I need to come and express myself. So I'm aware at tonight's meeting, this board will discuss the intersection of US Highway 50 with Highlands Drive in Mound House. However, I do not believe that addressing improvements at that intersection is adequate to address the safety concerns of motorists driving on US Highway 50 in Dayton due to a sharp increase in traffic and many traffic accidents that have occurred recently in Dayton. In fact, there was an accident at the intersection of US 50 and Fort Churchill Road on April 17th. That particular unsignalized intersection has been the site of many traffic accidents in recent years. Earlier this year, Ella Marquez Conchas lost her life on Highway 50. This was January 23rd at that intersection, US 50 and Highlands Drive in Mound House. Her mother, Rosie, is now faced with dealing with the grief of losing a 10-year-old child. It is my understanding the only board member to represent Lyon County that's present at this meeting today is Wes Henderson, and that's the only CAMPO board meeting member that represents Lyon County. And I understand the Dayton population currently at more than 15,000 is small compared to about 58,000 individuals in Carson City. However, I believe that Lyon County is being glossed over for needed safety improvements due to our lower population. The lack of Lyon County representation by boards such as the CAMPO board contributes to the problem as well. I am aware of NDOT's Dayton operational study results and their plan, but I believe action needs to be taken as soon as possible to prevent more lives from being lost. Waiting until 2026 for safety improvements on Highway 50 through Dayton is waiting too long. I know many people on social media call it the death highway at current times. And that's a very unpalatable situation for drivers from anywhere that are driving on US 50 through Dayton. Thank you.
Do I have any other public comment?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Melissa
Oh,
Fraker.
you need to, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Fraker, and I live in Mound House also. And since 1997, we were addressing a light up there, and nobody, we got run over again. There's been a lot of accidents. There's been a lot of deaths up there. I've lived there for over 30 some odd years. And Dayton, Silver Springs, the parkway that just went in, and we're being passed over. We're being totally passed over. And CAMPO, what was it? What'd you say, 26? That's too long. We need something done, and I'd like to know how to go about getting something done immediately up in that area. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Do I have any other public comment? Okay, we're going to move on then to agenda item number 4, which is approval of our minutes of April 10th, 2024. Does any member have any corrections, updates, anything? Good to go? Then I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. Motion by Mr. Novak, second by Ms. Maloney. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5A, which is discussion and possible action regarding a local road safety plan for CAMPO. And Ms. Kelly, are you going to take us through this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman, Senior Transportation Planner for the record. Staff is here tonight to talk about the local road safety plan and the actions CAMPO staff will be taking as a result of this plan. The local road safety plan was paid for by NDOT and made in partnership with NDOT safety engineers. The plan began in fall of 2023 and has had 2 meetings with stakeholders listed in the report as a presentation, as well as a presentation about progress to the Mound House Citizen Advisory Board earlier this year. Here's the agenda for tonight's talk. First, we'll talk about what the local road safety plan is. Local roads as defined in the plan include all non-interstate roads. It's important to know about the safe system approach and the paradigm shift in thinking about roadway construction and traffic safety before and after the safe system approach is used. I'll go over some of the crash data. We'll also talk about the 10 priority safety locations and the project recommendations stemming from those locations. And finally, I'll speak about the ongoing tasks. This is an actionable plan, one that inspires actions to help continue to take the necessary steps to improve safety on the region's roadways and realize our goal of 0 traffic fatalities by 2050. So let's first talk about the wins. What does this local road safety plan give us as far as wins? So the completion of this plan signifies many wins for the Carson area MPO and those that reside within it. First of all, CAMPO staff have met with numerous agencies during this process, and we've worked together to understand road safety and every individual's role in it. NDOT funded the local road safety plan, and their people and all of the volunteers and stakeholders worked through hours of field work and planning review to make this plan happen. Stakeholders devoted their time participating in events and meetings and providing essential comments. And this is probably the most thorough crash analysis CAMPO has ever seen. Staff plan to continue to track and update the crash data and report annually to the board through the annual network monitoring report. Third, this plan provides evidence for a data-driven priority safety locations, which local agencies can prioritize and begin improving safety as soon as we can. Four, the completion of this plan gives CAMPO more opportunities to apply for funding from HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and Safe Streets for All. And finally, this plan provides context to CAMPO's traffic safety issues in relation to the state's traffic safety issues so that staff understand where to emphasize safety investment when meeting or conversing with state agencies. In other words, it means that CAMPO's speaking the same language as state agencies about safety and can advocate for safety issues that CAMPO's concerned about. So let's talk about the safe system approach. The safe system approach to roadway safety is an important concept to understand. So on the left here is a table describing the traditional approach versus the Vision Zero approach, which stems from this safe system approach. So the traditional approach uses the assumptions that were made when most of the roads within CAMPO were built over the last century, which were traffic deaths are inevitable. Roads were built assuming people would behave perfectly on the road, follow all the signs, and drive the speed limit. The focus on traffic safety was to prevent all collisions, any collision at all. There was a focus on individual responsibility and an underlying assumption that saving lives is expensive. Vision Zero states that traffic deaths are preventable and we should be working towards that goal. Humans make mistakes. We need to design and build roads for fallible human beings, people, that make mistakes. Instead of focusing on preventing all collisions, we need to focus on preventing those fatal and serious injury collisions. The systems approach is detailed to the right, which focuses on this shared responsibility for safer roads, including safer vehicles, safer people, safer speeds, safer roads, and post-crash care. Finally, staff wanted to dispel the myth that saving lives is expensive. Preventable roadway deaths are extremely expensive, not only monetarily, but ripple through families and communities with a heavy emotional toll. Saving lives is not expensive. Using the safe systems approach, CAMPO can encourage local agencies to implement safe roads within their projects. This will take time, though. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'll talk about staff's plan for future steps later in the talk to go in that direction. So the crash data overview is this most recent 5 years of data, and the crash data analysis, again, was one of those first tasks of the consultant, so it was based in 2018 to 2022. There was this focus on the fatal and serious injuries because those are the ones we want to focus on preventing. 93% of CAMPO crashes happen on these non-interstate or local roads that encompass the local road safety plan. 20.4% of crashes happen on road segments, and 73% of all crashes occur in intersections. 30.5% of all crashes occur at signalized intersections, and 42.5% occur at unsignalized intersections. The most common crash types that we see around CAMPO are rear-end crashes and angle crashes. The crash data within the document is on page 16 and Appendix A. And then I have a video here that I wanted to detail that really explains the local road safety plan approach to site-specific, systematic, and systemic. And I think there are important distinctions to make because they play a big part in how the recommendations were structured. And so let's just watch this.
What is the best way to address severe crashes on your roadways, or even prevent them from happening in the first place? The good news is there isn't just one way. There are three, and they can be used in combination depending on your situation. The three approaches are site-specific, systematic, and systemic. They all provide a framework for reducing future crashes by deploying safety treatments. There are differences in these approaches that may make one approach more effective than the others based on the type of crash problems or risks you are addressing. Let's break down each one. The site-specific or hotspot approach has been the most common and widely used safety management approach in our toolbox. This approach is based primarily on historic crash rates, frequency, and/or severity. If a concentration of crashes occurs at a particular location, a hotspot, you might expect crashes to keep happening at that location unless improvements are made. To reduce crashes, you would likely deploy improvements tailored for that site. The site-specific approach is valuable for mitigating high crash locations. However, it is also reactive, meaning multiple crashes must happen at the same location before improvements are made. Costs can vary widely depending on the improvements. For example, reconstructing a curve where you have experienced numerous severe crashes over time may require right-of-way acquisition. So the site-specific approach is helpful for addressing individual locations with multiple severe crashes, but is limited to only those locations. What about the systematic approach? When you hear systematic, think system-wide. Countermeasures like pavement markings, safety edge, paved shoulders, or rumble strips are proven to reduce severe crashes, and some agencies require them to be installed on all roads meeting certain criteria. For instance, your agency may adopt a policy to install rumble strips on all roadways with a posted speed of 55 miles an hour and 2-foot paved shoulders. The decision was made based on the safety performance of rumble strips in preventing head-on and run-off-the-road crashes. The systematic approach provides for a more widespread deployment of safety improvements than the hotspot approach and can address roadways that have had few or no crashes to date. While a systematic deployment requires no further analysis to prioritize locations, the approach requires more funding, since all locations are improved over time. So, the systematic approach addresses many locations, regardless of crash history, but it does not prioritize based on the risk of crashes. Speaking of risk, let's talk about the systemic approach. The systemic approach is proactive and involves deployment of proven, low-cost countermeasures at locations with higher risk. The systemic approach is not based solely on past crashes. It is based on roadway features or characteristics that correlate with certain severe crash types. Think of it like a health checkup. Your doctor asks questions about your family history and your personal health habits. Does heart disease run in your family? Do you exercise? She uses this data to identify your risk for certain diseases. If you mitigate the risk factors, you can prevent or reduce the severity of these diseases. The same can be done with your roadways. For example, you may know that curves with a radii between 500 and 1,000 feet, shoulders that are 2 foot or less, and moderate traffic volume correlate with severe roadway departure crashes on your system. When crashes do happen, the roadway features are similar, but the locations are scattered. The most effective way to prevent crashes in this scenario is to prioritize locations associated with this risk and deploy proven, low-cost safety countermeasures, even if the specific locations have not had a crash. Identify the risk factors, prioritize, and treat the locations with the highest risk, and reduce the potential for future severe crashes. All three approaches, site-specific, systematic, and systemic, have value for improving roadway safety. Use them together for a comprehensive approach to make smarter investments, improve your road system, and save lives in your community. Contact FHW
There are other great
today to learn more.
videos from the FHWA on local road safety plans. But back to this. One of the takeaways of the crash analysis was that the total crashes have decreased over the last 5 years with the blue bars. However, fatal crashes indicated with a K in red and serious injury crashes indicated with an A in yellow have remained high. The goal of the local road safety plan is to concentrate on reducing these fatal and serious injury collisions within CAMPO, within the 10 priority safety areas and other high-risk areas within CAMPO. This graph depicts the fatal crashes by emphasis area. And these critical emphasis areas are used by the state to understand where to prioritize safety improvements based on the contributing factors to fatal and serious injury crashes. And within CAMPO, the top 5 emphasis areas are intersections, impaired driving, older drivers, speed-related, and pedestrians. And this is very similar to the Nevada State critical emphasis area data. However, within CAMPO, older drivers are associated with more crashes than the state as a whole. The Office of Traffic Safety is offered to work with CAMPO staff to work on solutions centered around older drivers, and more details to come on that in the future. The crash data overview again, here showing the 31 fatal crashes and 81 serious injury crashes between 2018 and 2022 with the latest data that we had when we did the analysis. And we use that analysis to choose the 10 priority safety locations. Staff wanted to represent locations within Carson City, Lyon, and Douglas County. The segments include Solomon, North Carson, South Curry, and East College. The intersections we focused on were both signalized and unsignalized. We tried to get a selection of both different kinds of intersections: North Carson and Nye, Gonai and Hot Springs, Airport Road and US 50, US 395 and Topsy, and Highlands and US 50 in Mound House. I'm going to go through how the project observations and recommendations are ordered within the document. First, you'll see the summary of recommendations based on the 10 priority locations within the main document on page 47 or packet page 79. You can also look in Appendix C, which details the field review sheets. And these are all of the reviews and observations and recommendations that safety professionals and stakeholders made when we were out in the field and visited all the sites, some of them during the day and in the evening at nighttime, so we could observe them at nighttime as well. In Appendix E, beginning on packet page 333, there are project descriptions with the listed countermeasures, the crash modification factors, the crash data, and the cost. And later in Appendix E, beginning on packet page 355, you can see the project description and a breakdown of the costs associated with each of these improvements, the recommended improvements. So the FHWA has 28 proven safety countermeasures now to improve safety on the roadways, and many of them have already been implemented within CAMPO, but we can still do more. Appendix D details these proven safety countermeasures if you want to take a look at each of them. There's a sample on the slide here with lighting, with corridor lighting. Nighttime crashes have a crash reduction factor, or CRF, of 28%. A pedestrian countdown timer on a pedestrian signal can reduce crashes by 70%, or have a crash reduction factor by 70%. Having a pedestrian crossing island has a crash reduction factor of 56%. Something that's been implemented almost in everywhere that of these priority locations, except for Topsy intersection, was the backplates with retroreflective borders. You'll see those yellow borders on the signals, and those have a crash reduction factor of 15%. So the completion of this plan is really only the beginning. So let's talk about what happens next. So within Mound House in Lyon County, over the next year, CAMPO staff will communicate with the Lyon County Board of Commissioners and NDOT to understand the supported safety design recommendations within Mound House and to gather support for a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application. CAMPO staff will continue to provide updates to the Mound House Citizen Advisory Board and Mound House residents and encourage their participation and support. The Healthy Communities Coalition and the Office of Traffic Safety is working on some banners with safety messaging to be posted along US 50 within Mound House in the short term. In January 2025, staff will begin a North Carson Complete Streets feasibility study, and this will include North Carson and Nye intersection. Carson City staff is working with NV Energy and this year to install additional lighting to North Carson and Nye as well. RTC is planning a tentative safety project on College Parkway scheduled for design in 2024 and planned for construction in 2025. Carson City was awarded the Curry Street Complete Streets Project congressionally designated funding. This project design is going forward in 2025 with construction planned in 2027. Safety recommendations from this local road safety plan will be included. The Gonai Road rehabilitation is in design now with construction planned for 2026. District 1 College and Airport Pavement Preservation Project, including lane alignment, is in design now with construction planned for 2025. Staff is also working with the GIS team on a crash dashboard detailing crash locations and contributing factors within CAMPO. This will be modeled on the Louisville Zero Fatalities dashboard, one that respectfully reflects the lives lost in traffic fatalities and those seriously injured on the roadways. Since the beginning of 2024, staff have performed road safety audits where there has been a fatal crash. Staff have visited each of the fatalities within CAMPO so far this year in Mound House and Highlands, North Carson and Nye, Jacks Valley Road, and plan to visit the interchange location where the driver entered 580 in the wrong direction last week, a crash that resulted in 2 fatalities. There have been 5 lives lost within CAMPO in 2024 due to traffic fatalities. Staff is reviewing traffic safety messaging and strategies based on critical emphasis areas to help communicate safety habits and to facilitate a safe community. Staff is planning a meeting, hopefully a series of meetings with press and public information officers and law enforcement to speak about strategies to improve standardizing traffic safety messaging during and after an incident and to improve communication between law enforcement, the press, planners, engineers, and the citizenry. Referencing the safe system approach, it really takes everyone working together to make a safe system. So how can we work better together? I'd like to thank Lacey Tisler, Chief Traffic Safety Engineer, and all of the stakeholders for their participation. Staff made the plan publicly available a couple of weeks ago, and we received 3 comments, and staff will be responding to them in turn, and we've also passed those comments on to the consultant. Finally, staff will continue to report on safety within the annual network monitoring report. Last year, staff and the CAMPO board emphasized safety as a main takeaway. And as you can see, staff are taking steps to make this local road safety plan come to life to save lives. And with that, thank you.
Does any member have a question, comment, or otherwise? Want to, Mr. Novak, you're first? Okay. But anything that we need to address, I don't want to take motions approving things.
Yeah.
If there's items that we need to discuss and bring into the scope of the document.
I was the CAMPO member that was part of the committee, so I reviewed all the stuff and been on the field visits. And I'd say in general, it's a good analysis of what's going on. I mean, some of the things I don't like is the data is still dated. It takes forever to get the data, but you use the best you can. And I think we all agree we'd like to jump on some of these projects quicker than not, but that's the reality. We're gonna do as good as we can. So a couple other things, Highway 50, 395 south of Topsy, those are NDOT roadways, and we'll work closely with them. But again, they're kind of like the final say on it. And I think we're gonna try and be in sync on all the items. But NDOT has quite a few corridor studies and safety management plans. And as bad as these numbers might look to Carson City, they're actually worse elsewhere in the state. So it's difficult to get Carson City to the top of the list, but doing this is a great way to get started. And I think one of the last things, we have all these factors of how these improvements work. And I would hope that as we go through this study that we collect the data and we can actually add to the national database. NDOT invented rumble strips in 1977. So there's a lot of good things we do here, and I'd like to give back to the safety community. That's all I'll say at this point.
Okay, somebody else? Member Schutte?
Thank you. One of the questions that I had in terms of the study and the stakeholders, when looking at the factors that cause accidents or could lead to an accident, speaking in terms of there's drivers who can make mistakes, but then also in terms of pedestrian or in terms of population served. So I think about areas where there are like fish, and different populations in an area where there are more people on foot and crossing more frequently. Is that part of the study?
I think that is a great recommendation to be included in further analysis to the study.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important because road safety, and especially when we speak about roads serving the needs of everyone, whether they're driving, walking, rolling, riding, to be mindful of the behaviors of everyone in terms of our assessment and our mitigation measures. So thank you.
So I'd like to kind of go back a little bit on this plan to have just a clearer understanding for the public and what happens from the planning document. And so while was it Laura? No, the public that we received and stuff is for the public to truly understand that what happens is we put a document together, we can prioritize needs, but it doesn't mean that project is number one in getting done. And I think that it's imperative that everyone understands that, as Greg indicated, some of the roads within this report is not owned by Carson City or not owned by Lyon County. It may be owned by DOT. And so we're taking this holistic view of all the roads within CAMPO and what we need to do. But as Mr. Novak stated, this particular road in CAMPO that's in NDOT's control may not rank number one or number two in all of their priorities. And I think that somewhere in the plan, while our job is to prioritize what's in our region, I think it's anywhere that we could add a comment or do something that indicates that it's just our region, that asterisk, it may not be the same 10 segments or 10 roads when NDOT takes it to its entirety. I think it's important that the public out there that's looking for us to do something and to correct a issue that they see on a road, that while it makes the top 10 in our list, it may be the top 40 in a different list. And so I just don't want people having some sense that that means their road will come to fruition. And I'm not sure how we do that. More, maybe even just putting it on the record so that they understand that we're one metropolitan planning organization, right? There are others doing, I'm going to guess, the very same exercise.
So
Right.
you're right. I mean, CAMPO is a transportation planning organization. Our role is to plan for transportation within the CAMPO boundary, which includes Lyon County, Carson City, and, well, a portion of Lyon County, Carson City, and a portion of Douglas County. And while CAMPO can put forward recommendations, it's also important to communicate and influence with the plan or provide the plan and the justification of the plan to NDOT for NDOT-owned roads within CAMPO and to the local agencies, to Lyon County and Douglas County. CAMPO cannot push forward on any project. It has to go through the city itself. So our goal is to, one, bring up transportation safety as an issue, and two, to communicate and mediate between the road owners that in every project, it's very important to consider traffic safety engineering options and to know those options and to be familiar with them when you are planning anything on any road, if at all possible. And so this is one way to do that. And so as a mediator, as an influencer, we will continue to speak with all the local agencies in that vein. But the CAMPO board or CAMPO staff itself cannot bring forward projects, the engineering projects, but we can provide the substance behind prioritizing and communicating, and the substance behind the justification of those projects.
Well, I think it's important that it provides data, that hopefully all of our goals, and it doesn't matter which board, whether it's Lyon County or Douglas isn't here right now, or Carson City RTC, that we're using all of this data as an element of our decision making. And I think that that's really what this document does, is it brings forward data to help us make decisions based on that. I'm a little bit disappointed that why can't we update, especially fatalities in our area, quicker? I don't think it's that we're not aware of a fatality. And even though I recognize it's because you're waiting for probably all the other documents that come with it that tell you whether it was pedestrian-based, a rear-end accident, all those other types of avenues, it always just seems like we're chasing it, because the data is 2 years old. And so it's really hard when I feel for the public out there, right? You say, we just had another accident. And here we are, though, utilizing data from 22. So we don't even have anything in 23, and we don't have anything from the first quarter of 24. So I don't know what the avenues or choices or things are, but just even if it's, I don't know what the answer is, but having more recent data, I just don't understand why it's so hard to get. A crash is entered immediately via a ticket methodology. So
Well-
where it doesn't go next or how it doesn't, I don't know what the gap is that gets it into the next reporting chain. But potentially we could work to do something there, probably because they're national databases, but, right? Did I hit that already, Sandra? It's a national
That's a
problem.
big part of it, yeah.
Yeah. And did you want to make comment?
I see some other hands
That's
up,
okay.
but if you.
You're working on the
But I
one.
wanted to
Come on.
build on the, what's next? How do we work together? So first, I want to, applaud you all for entering in this with us. We thought these local road safety plans were a great idea to partner again with combining the data and the experience of the state DOT with the local agencies. And I'm surprised not more entities have taken us up on it. There's 3, is that right, Lacey? So by doing that, that helps us to prioritize that because it shows that local commitment, that local support, which is part of our prioritization process. So Mr. Novak is correct. There are areas of the state that are worse, but the fact that you all are working with us, again, I'm not going to make any promises, but
It helps.
we are working together to implement the recommendations in this plan. It helps make it eligible for the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is the federal funds that NDOT has access to. It also helps both with eligibility and competitiveness for some of the grant applications like Safe Streets for All. So, it really is a partnership. And then I would not be doing my job if I didn't bring this up in terms of the terminology we use. And I'm not picking on anyone, but we try really hard not to use the term accident because there's always a reason, there's always a cause, and it's preventable. So we try and use the term crash. And I'm sorry to, again, not to call anyone out on that, but it took me a while to understand that, but it's really important. It's preventable. It's not an accident. There's always a reason, there's a cause, and there's a way to prevent it. So I'm happy to help with some of the other Q&As, but just wanted to put that out there.
Ms. Maloney.
Excellent presentation, Kelly. Thank you. Just to sort of piggyback on some of the comments that have been made, getting these projects in here is the fastest way to get them funded. And having an independent organization such as CAMPO provides, I think the public can kind of think of it as like an independent letter of recommendation in support of a project. So when Nevada DOT or when Lyon County or when someone tries to go do that project, they can pull in this plan and say, look at all these partners that work together to say this is a top priority. So that's fantastic. Also adding the benefit cost ratio work that went into this, really will save cost in terms of preparing grant applications that ask for these types of analyses when you're applying for money. So it really will help open doors. I've never seen a plan that was so thorough with the BCR stuff as this one. Really, really good job. I did have one question. I got a call the other day about the South Carson segment, and I wanted to see if maybe you could put on the record or clarify on behalf of Carson City that just invested so much money into South Carson and then seeing now additional improvements. And the question that I got was why are we putting even more money into South Carson? What do we do wrong? When I went through the list of the potential countermeasures right around packet page 78, it seemed to me that they were additional improvements that maybe weren't included, maybe due to funding or something in that South Carson project, but I was hoping you could maybe just speak briefly to that. Is there any money or anything that needs to be redone that was invested in previously?
I think the transportation manager wants to make a comment, but I will make a comment that even though the crash data pointed towards South Carson, I will say that the South Carson project was completed in the middle of the analysis, the crash analysis period. And so that the amount of crashes may be high for that area due to the pre versus the post implementation of South Carson. And so we made the recommendations based on observations while out there, given all of the safety improvements that have already been made.
No, I appreciate the question, because I had the same question when I saw this segment pop up and go, didn't we just take care of this? But yeah, so there have been some things that we've noticed out there, and, going just down the list here on the packet page, right? Larger speed limit signs. That wasn't something that was contemplated during the design. It could be a good recommendation to easily swap out signs, make the speed limits more visible to those driving down the corridor. A number of areas that we've identified, not that we've done anything wrong, but there could be potential enhancements with, for instance, the audible pedestrian signals. We don't have any audible pedestrian signals anywhere in Carson, and that is a recommendation through all the signalized intersections. And so there's a number of those that could be added over time that make the corridor even safer than we've done through that South Carson Complete Streets study.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Can I just ask one more question?
Certainly.
Madam Mayor? Putting on my Carson City hat, so I also sit on the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission, as do most of the members of CAMPO. And Carson City is moving forward with a ballot measure in November related to potential, with some language related to local roads. My concern and maybe suggestion, and I don't want to derail this because it is a great document, I would like to see a sentence, and maybe I missed it, and if that's the case, great. A sentence differentiating between local roads as defined for this plan, which are anything non-interstate, as you just defined it, and local roads as they're defined in the National Highway System local roads. And it may just be as easy as one sentence that we add to the introduction, but I suspect that would be very helpful for avoiding confusion in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The local road safety plan, the name, the local road safety plan is one of those 28 FHWA proven safety countermeasures. So it has to be called a local road safety plan, but local roads are not functionally classified local neighborhood roads that the city, Carson City, has been speaking about, the funding and condition of those local roads. So
Commissioner Maloney, can I ask back at page 23? Maybe, I don't know if this sentence is the one, but if this works and if we want to tweak it, I'm happy to work with them. Right at the beginning, packet page 23 of the executive summary, third sentence in of the first paragraph, a local road for the purposes of this local road safety plan is defined as any publicly owned road in the CAMPO area with the exception of I-580.
If the commission were willing, I think adding a sentence right after that to expressly reference
A
that
difference?
the functional classification of local road as
Got it.
is differentiated from this, I think would be very helpful for the public that's hearing the word local many times in many different contexts.
I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
I'd like to know how are you going to write something? What sentence would you be adding there?
Is defined as any publicly owned road in the CAMPO area with the exception of I-580. This is not the federal or term used for functional classification purposes or something along those lines.
Is there another document that defines that? So this document is utilizing
We
the
can
definition pursuant to this, and there's a definition pursuant to a different
we
document.
can reference NDOT's functional classification.
That would be, I think if you reference that, it would add clarity to the two different local road definitions would be great. And I could
Okay.
accept that. Good update.
I also wanted to add to the chair's comments about keeping track of more recent fatalities. One of the things that staff has been working on is creating this GIS dashboard, which is like a map with some data, a simple interface where the most recent crashes can be mapped and identified sooner than staff receive the overall state data. And so we are, we're working on that interface itself too.
Well, and I noticed that something else you indicated is you were going to, like update the crash data annually. So is it but the plan was, or is it every 2 years? I think it said annually or every 2 years. Because again, I think it's important that the document lives because it may change. And I think the great example was the discussion of South Carson Street because we already did a big chunk, but it's in the middle of the 5-year study. So as you're able to move through that and chunk on the next year and then the next year, that project may indeed drop out, right? Because it won't rise to the level of significance in the crash data because we put a roundabout at Stewart or, we did some other mitigations already. And so I think it's imperative that the document lives on because as we get money, I don't want to put more money into South Carson without more robust data because of so much that we did. And so my concern is that's the other problem, right? Because it's so far behind, you've already done updates to some of these roadways. And so that's what I meant by it's a contributing factor to our decisions, but it cannot be the only decision maker to make a project rise. And so just wonderful job. I look forward to you being able to update it and then give us progress reports or whatever, how we're doing. And then interested to see if a project would, like I said, like South Carson, whether, I think it probably surprised all of us when that one came on, but it doesn't when it's 2017 to 2022. That makes it old data before we did, right as we did the fixes
Well, I think, I'm going to.
on some of them, right?
No, I
Didn't some of that
appreciate-
just come to fruition in 2022?
It did, some of that opened up at the end of 21, I think, is when we finished that work. But the plan is more than the 10 priority locations that were identified. And so, yeah, in a future update of the plan, I think it may fall out of that priority list. But there's takeaways that we can learn from South Carson that we can apply to other corridors that maybe aren't identified in this plan. And so if we can take lessons learned from past projects or through a detailed analysis of the corridors that currently are in this plan and apply them to projects across the CAMPO region by all agencies, then I think regardless of what corridor is in here, we've moved the needle and we've made a difference in safety in those areas. And I know switching hats to my Carson City hat for a moment, I know that we're looking at things like on the video about edge conditions. Should striping be wider in certain locations? Should we put delineators on the edge of the road on a curve to let driver at night know that there's a curve coming if there's not a sign or a notice there now? And so there's just very simple, low-cost solutions that can be implemented as the video said systematically to make any project safer than it was before we went there in that location. So I just want to provide that background.
I agree. Wes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment on the crash versus accidents. We can thank former Assemblyman Menendo for that. He brought a bill one year they had to go through every statute that said crash, they had to change it to accident, or said accident, had to change it to crash. But just a historical note on that. Talking about this as a living document, which it is, and it has to be. So I think some of the concerns, because we went out into Lyon County, but CAMPO in Lyon County extends all the way out to Chase Road. And we're 1 mile, not even a mile into Lyon County for the only intersection that got identified there. So as this is a living document and we get more data on more dangerous intersections in Lyon County, how do we get those included in here too, so that we bring those to the attention of NDOT? And as was addressed earlier, having it in this document gives it some credence. We've got 2 really bad intersections. Fort Churchill was one, and the Occidental area, both out in the eastern part of CAMPO. So I know you guys are aware of them, and that we're not ignoring them, but I just want to make sure that we have a way to get those identified as priority intersections. Thank you.
Ms. Schutte, do you have some more to add?
Well, I just appreciate the comment in terms of the standardized messaging and truly the need to work together. And you just really pointed out why as well, to bring out or to highlight the needs of all the members of CAMPO and all the whole area in a way that perhaps we don't always see. I think it's also important that we speak the same language as evidenced by the accident versus crash. That is so absolutely true. And then these documents really help people understand the whys as well behind the decisions made and the mitigation efforts and what works and what doesn't, and why sometimes people will think, well, can't we just do this? And then in reality, that mitigation would cause a different kind of crash and perhaps one that is more dangerous. So I think that's really important to measure. I love what you just said, Chris, in terms of the plan is more than a priority identified. It's the takeaways and lessons learned that will also be beneficial in ways that sometimes are harder to measure, but are no less impactful. And so I really appreciate this safety plan. So thank you.
Just building on that, some of the comments that we received from the public were, where's this specific recommendation going to happen? Where's this one going to happen? And that's really why I played that site-specific, systematic, and systemic, because the recommendations were really built to emphasize the systemic solutions that aren't one location focused, but like Chris said, were those that could be implemented at crosswalks, at specific locations, but in all kinds of locations across CAMPO to increase safety. So, yeah.
Okay, I don't see, oh, Mr. Novak?
Yeah.
Go to Mr. Dodson next.
I used to do this for a living, so that I'm trying to remember.
It's your fault. Okay.
One of the things, I know we're focusing on the fatals and the serious injuries, but I know it always comes up. But if we could aggregate the two-way stops and the four-way stops and the roundabouts to compare those, because everybody's got strong feelings about roundabouts, but I didn't see anything in here that said how good they work.
Right. How they've reduced fatalities or severe
Yeah,
crashes. They may not have eliminated crashes, but the severity is greatly reduced, or so we have been led to believe, but the data would be nice to know.
and the last comment as vice chair of CAMPO, that it focuses on existing locations and projects that we've done, but it's weak on how do we stay ahead of public and private developments that impact our highway network? How do we get our comments in, be it the state putting in a building, new houses going in, planning level decisions? I want to make sure that the proven safety countermeasures and the traffic safety professionals have some input to those decisions as well.
So I really see the discussion points of this going to, for instance, RTC review for if there are items that Carson City should be adding into its development standards. We just did appendix, we just did Title 18 and Appendix 18 to see if there's anything in there that the CAMPO or RTC staff is seeing a takeaway from this that's not within our current standards. So there should be a comparison there to say, hey, should we require countdown pedestrian things at every intersection or something of that nature, and to begin to say, we're going to put those in our development standards. And then I think that would behoove the same thing that Lyon and Douglas should do, is to utilize the document to see if there are standards that should be implemented within our codes.
Yeah, NDOT has excellent access management standards, right? And if all the agencies had something similar or follow NDOT's, that would definitely help in the long run as well.
And you can, I think for the most part, don't we look at some standardized tools and reporting and requirements when we do our work?
When we review plans in accordance with development, for instance, then we're working with our development engineering side at the city. I'm assuming other staff is doing similar for other counties and making sure we're, following the requirements outlined in our code. There are some areas like access management where maybe they do need some updating. We do have some language in there, but I think it's an interesting and excellent conversation to keep open going forward.
Good. I'm going to let Mr. Dotson speak, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to touch on the funding benefit that this document is providing. I know with the Safe Streets for All program, the federal grant program that made available $5 billion, I think over 5 years, of federal money nationwide. There was an article back in USA Today, I think it was around the end of January, that talked about the difficulty of the smaller communities being able to become eligible for those grants. And I know we've talked about, a lot of the priorities go to the area where there's more traffic, more crashes. But another difficulty is in the ability to apply for those grants. And the article pointed out that one of the reasons that a lot of the grant applications got rejected was because they didn't have the preparatory work, like a document like this. So I think that this would really help the CAMPO agencies, have something that they could hang their hat on and go after some of these bigger implementation grants, which I know we plan to do, look at that project out in the Mound House area. So I think it's really an important document, and you did a good job with it. Thank you.
I don't see any more comment up here. Is there any further public comment on this item? We didn't hear earlier, Mr. French.
Thank you, Chair, and Commissioners, boards. Gosh, I've got you all messed up. Thank you very much. One of the questions that I didn't hear, and it may have been that I was trying very hard to take notes, but you're getting your data from different places, and you've got Lyon and Douglas and Carson City. The sheriff and such, they put in an accident report every day, or their reports every day, and there should be somebody, I feel, at the sheriff's station that would sort out crashes and be able to get that data to the people that are combining it all on a daily basis. It's not, it might be reported to the public on a monthly or bi-monthly or however in a package deal, but I feel that they could contribute a lot, because every day, whether it's a crash of a broken tail light or a dented door, somebody just smacked somebody in a parking lot, those things all go through their paperwork every day, and it just seems like they would be able to find somebody that could grab that up, take those pieces out, send them on to the data build. And I appreciate all the comments today. It's really helped me understand the circumstances that you're dealing with every day, so thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, is there any other public comment? No, you have to turn to green. There you go.
There we go. I see the green now. Okay, so the
have to
current
identify yourself for the
population
record.
of Carson
You
City
have to
is.
identify yourself for the record.
Oh, yeah,
guys.
I'm sorry. I forgot.
That's okay.
I got carried away with statistics. So Laura Brunslick, I live in Dayton, and Lyon County's population is currently increasing. Carson City's population is decreasing. So that, to me, warrants more individuals on the board that represent Lyon County in the future, being proactive, as you were discussing being proactive. A proactive approach would include making changes to CAMPO, in addition to, as I said earlier, prioritizing Lyon County. If I don't have a projector, but Lyon County is a tiny blip. Tiny, tiny blip. Something's wrong with that picture. Thank you.
Do you have any other public comment? Think you would make some? Not up.
Melissa Fraker, who do we get a hold of in NDOT? I love you so much. You are doing so fabulous for us, but it needs to happen sooner than later. I mean, I'm the squeaky wheel. I will get out there, but I don't know who besides you guys to help us get a light or something in there, because, you know, there's a little store across the street and these kids are all over here wanting to go to this little store across the street. There is no lights, there's no crosswalks, and there's a basketball court on the other side of the neighborhood, you know, and they cannot get to that without their parents to drive them across the street, bring them back, and everybody's so busy these days, you know, and our children are like stuck. We finally got a little, what do you call it, park over on our side, but that's for super little kids, not for the kids that have been there. My kids grew up, you know, I've been in this area my whole life. And like I said, 30 years of where I'm at now, or over 30 years, and I'm going to stay there. But there has been so much development that is further out that, I mean, it's astronomical on how much it's grown. Dayton, I remember, was nothing, okay? And everything is, you know, NDOT, do you guys know who I can contact with NDOT to get this, you know, happening any sooner? And thank you guys so much for involving us again in Carson City, because we used to be Carson City. It was Carson Highlands Estates where we lived, you know, and now we're like, and then this K-rail that did not need to be replaced. That was a flipping $500,000 or more that's going from Dayton all the way up the hill, when it could have been a light. It could have been something else than replacing that. And I don't know why NDOT did that. It's frustrating because, you know, in I think it was 94, but anyway, we got the speed limit lowered. All right, it did work for a minute time, but now we have everybody just flooring us. And it's a seven lanes right there. You know, you got 2 turn pockets, you got a middle lane. Everybody's learning how to drive. Everybody's learning.
Thank you so much.
You know,
please meet with Sandra after the meeting and she can give you some
right on.
hints, and with
Right here.
Okay. thank
your
you, Sandra.
representative
Okay.
to get
great.
some of your
well,
answers.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Good work.
Do I have any other? All right, then I'm going to bring it back up here for a motion, and please, whomever's making it, don't forget to say in corrections as discussed on the record today so that they update those. Ms. Maloney?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the CAMPO Local Road Safety Plan and the agency pledge with the corrections as presented on the record.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you so much, and I might have to, except for it says draft now everywhere, so anyway, you'll send us the few page changes so we can hole punch it and put it in our binder and make it real. Thank you. We're now going to go to agenda item 6A, which is the Transportation Manager's Report. Mr. Martinovich, do you have some information to share?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We spent a lot of time talking about the local road safety plan, and I wanted to provide an update on grants. We were very close on submitting this year and bringing to this board a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application for the Mound House area. It's a little premature to have a good scoped out comprehensive project by I think it's a May 13th deadline. The other component is, to Commissioner Dodson's point, of the requirements for federal grants can sometimes be a little more challenging than some of the other funding sources. Safe Streets and Roads for All is one of the simplest forms I've ever seen. It is an online fill in the blank, check the box application process. The issue we sometimes struggle with is the match component. And as CAMPO is a federally funded agency with no local funds, we really have limited match as an agency ourselves. So we rely upon our partners, the state partners, our local partners, to support that. Safe Streets and Roads for All has a minimum implementation or the project budget of $2.5 million of federal dollars. So we'd have to ask for a minimum of 2.5, and it's an 80-20 match ratio, which means we would have to bring to the table at least $625,000 in match. And I think we can get there over time, and with working with our agency partners, NDOT, Lyon County, and potentially other sources at the state, to do that. We just weren't prepared to do that in this short order, given the requirements of coordinating with different boards and jurisdictions and getting that done. But to Kelly's point, we're going to work with the Lyon County Commission, we're going to work with the NDOT Board of Transportation's folks, and we're going to work with their executive leadership and see how we can get this going, given this plan and our other US 50 corridor study plan we're working on as well. So stay tuned for that. I do plan, following completion of this plan, to work with NDOT and request the use of Highway Safety Improvement Program funds for portions, if not all of these, sections of projects in cooperation with how we can match those dollars. Kelly mentioned the Go-Nye Hot Springs project. We're moving on design on that in Carson City. And so maybe there's opportunity there to make more improvements at the Hot Springs Go-Nye intersection using HSIP funds and things like that. So more to come on that. Some coordination will work in the background to get those right projects hopefully funded. US 50 study, a draft plan was delivered to us today, so we're going to review that internally. Get that out at some point, probably to the public as well, and in front of this board for your input, as well as the next phase of that. Also out on the street right now is an update to our public participation plan. I mentioned that at our last CAMPO meeting related to some updates to mapping for Title VI compliance. So that is out there for its 45-day comment period, if you wanted to review and take a look at that. We're also working with Federal Highways Civil Rights Division and the External Civil Rights Division of NDOT on our Title VI plans for CAMPO as well. We're going through an annual review process, and so looking at what edits and updates, if any, need to be made for that. So potentially more to come in the Title VI front in the coming months. The last thing I'll mention is that we're going to be developing a TIP amendment to incorporate some of our newer projects, potentially incorporation of Highway Safety Improvement Program funds, as well as the funding we received for US 50 Phase 2, as well as our funding that was received through Carson City for some other projects. So look for that TIP amendment later in May as well for tentative adoption at the June CAMPO meeting. And so with that, I think I covered 6A and 6B, but in case, that was my transportation manager's report.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody have any member reports or anything under 6B? Craig?
Yeah, I think most of you heard about this, but last week NDOT had their 395 corridor study. Essentially, it's mainly in Douglas County, but it does, start at the south end of Carson City. So it was at Fuji Park, and I went. Haven't sent any official comments yet, but it covers some of the same locations we discussed today. And again, I think working in conjunction with NDOT in the long run is great for everybody. So if you haven't seen it, it's online. Get your comments in, and I won't say anything about the freeway.
Will there a lot of participants? Yeah, a lot came. Oh, good. Okay, anybody? Yes, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a comment for the people that live in Lyon County. NDOT is on our county commission agenda this Thursday to be there, so either Zoom in or show up.
don't see anything else. Then we will go to final public comment. Is there anyone that did not get their comment done?
Thank you, Chair. Denny French, Carson City. On my way home from Reno today, saw a lot of beautiful scenery. It's a great day out, beautiful. I also saw a child trying to cross College Parkway at North, I think it was Northridge. It might have been the street before that, so the first main street. And he was waiting, and he waved on traffic because he didn't feel secure, and one of the vehicles hadn't stopped. Is one of the reasons he held up. But he wasn't making himself clear as his intentions. He was off his bike, which was good and such. But the school program that you had promoted or has been promoted through the city, I think needs to have kids be able to stand up for themselves. Don't cross until you're comfortable, of course, but make sure people know your intention. He was sort of waving people on and not waving people on. And I think that confused several drivers. Luckily, the bus driver that I was with was able to stop and was wondering why no one else, people did eventually stop, and the kid then didn't want to go over because the bus then kept some of his visibility for other situations down. But I'd like to point out the page 16.5 in the packet, and thank you very much for the presentation. It would be great to emphasize that map size on a page for itself. It just gives me a better sense of how big the areas that you're working on. And then there's a page in here that I think is great. It doesn't have some of the contact numbers, but it does have acknowledgements for advisory committee members. And so it has a list, and I was going to point that out. And the illustrations and everything are super in here, and I look forward to getting to look into it deeper. There is a map here, but then it doesn't seem to indicate some of the outer areas as boldly as I think that they deserve, and considerations to the concerns that they're having with the crashes that they've had and the fatalities. I think, it's like they're neighbors and they were part of Carson, as was stated at some point, but they need bigger acknowledgement, a program where they're included. Thank you.
Do you have anybody else? Okay. Well, with that, then I want to say we are adjourned, and thanks again for a great meeting and for making a special.